I think we can get started. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today is the first of a 3-series workshop that I'm running on perimenopause. And I think it's a really important time for us to have this conversation because I don't think society does a great job of really supporting women at this stage. Not in the way we are kind of made to feel in media, not in the way sometimes even the healthcare industry doesn't respect some of what we're experiencing. And there is a lot more awareness of perimenopause as its own stage. I will share a lot more about the work I do. But I'm going to just say that today I'm going to talk to you about what nobody has taught you about being a woman over 40. And let's just start with one thing out there. The body changes significantly. There are over 80 symptoms that come under perimenopause. And so it's not even a single, it's not just about having a hot flash.
I'm zooming. Where's my glasses?
So I could please request everybody to keep themselves muted. So my name is Pooja Veg. I run the nutrition clinic. I am a functional medicine nutritionist. I have been doing this for the last 15 years. And I will be sharing a lot more about my practice and my background. But the one thing that I want to say is that functional medicine is all about looking at connections. It's looking at what's going on in the body and how do we make sense of this. So what you may experience as symptoms may not just be, that you're imagining it or you're making a fuss about it. They are real. And there is an entire methodology that I have created over the last 15 years, helping us just take these symptoms and situations that feel isolated and turning them into a process that can then result in a simple step-by-step resolution. Nobody wants to feel like they're constantly on a food plan or constantly on a diet or constantly observing their symptoms. We have to have some level of resolution. Just to let you know, I'm not a medical doctor. So while this is health-related information, this is not treated as medical advice. If you have specific questions about your situation, please feel free to reach out to me. You can find us through our social media or our website. Book a 10-minute call to speak to me, especially if you're looking to make big changes. Definitely do reach out. Okay, so you're all here for a reason. I've been really overwhelmed by the number of people who've reached out since I announced that I'm doing this. So, a little bit of just basic housekeeping. This is the first of three-part webinar, which will take place at the same time, today, tomorrow, and day after. If you like what you hear today, please spread the word, invite your friends. I do think that for women to really understand this, we need to do this as a community. So you're here for a reason, and I hear this every day in my practice. What worked, a number of women say to me, what worked for me in my 20s and 30s just doesn't work anymore. And the language that I'm often hearing is, it's like the body just went and changed the rules. It's like, hang on, what happened? Things were working fine for a period of time. And then the same exercise, the same food, the same sleep, the same lifestyle is just not getting those results. And that's really frustrating. As everybody can imagine, and some of you might be feeling this way, there is a lot of frustration. There is a lot of confusion about what has happened. And there is almost this sense of, is this all about getting old? And do I have to just accept this? Yes, I've got somebody's raised their hands. They have a question. Okay, somebody has said that they have menopaused already and would like to cover some aspects. It's great that you ask me questions as we go along. So yes, while I focus a lot more on perimenopause, some of this will also impact menopause and postmenopause. And I am looking to do a series on what happens postmenopause because certain risk factors do go up. But what I will do is, before I take the Q&A this evening, I will talk about this a little bit more so that you get some information today as well about that. Okay, so let's look at the hormonal journey. This is very obvious. It starts with the period. then there are the fertility years, then there's the post-pregnancy years, and then there's perimenopause, and then there is post-menopause. So some of the issues that happen in the early stages are, acne, mood swings, very, very typical. And that tends to sort of settle into your 20s. And I think it's only, for a lot of women, it's only when they're trying to get pregnant that they realize that they might have a hormonal imbalance. I do see a lot of people with PCOS as a possible issue. And then there's pregnancy. And I believe there's a lot of support for women during the fertility years, during the pregnancy years, even just right after you have kids. But then there's almost this blank space that happens after that. So if you're, by the time you're in your 40s or 50s, if you've got teenagers, I feel like nobody's really talking enough about hormones. There's just this sense of go get your mammogram done, go get your pap done. All of that is great, but how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis is not something anybody is really addressing enough. And I think this is a really demanding time for women. Women at this stage have demanding jobs, have grown-up kids, have, marriages that have perhaps been around for a while, and that has its own, its own challenges. Aging parents, and there is this crushing feeling of there are so many demands, there is so much on my plate, and my body is just not, it's not cooperating, it's not really helping me out in this situation. These are some of the most common symptoms that come up in perimenopause: weight gain, fibroids, mood, the start of osteoporosis, low energy, and poor sleep. There's an entire list that I'll be sharing. But this is the space that I'm talking about. And for more and more women, as we delay having children, the post-pregnant fertility years and the perimenopause years are kind of blending into one. And that's really, really demanding. So you're not alone. I think you will hear a lot more about this. There is conversation about menopause in the workplace. There is conversation about, how are we really approaching and helping women? But the work I do and what we'll talk about today is how you can help yourself. I'm glad there is this awareness in society, but I think it starts with what you can do really with your plate, with your movement, with your lifestyle. So this is what I hear in my practice. These are comments that I've taken from conversations I've had. I'm eating the same, exercising the same, even exercising more, but my weight just goes up and up. I feel old and invisible. I even walk like an old woman. My body just changed overnight. I never felt this tired or irritable. I have acne now when I didn't have it as a teen, and my skin is so dry. And no matter what I eat, I feel bloated. Sometimes even water bloats me. Now, when I'm listening to these comments from my clients, I am thinking, well, there's something going on in the metabolism. There's something going on with joint pain and inflammation. Maybe it's a food you're eating that's making you more inflamed, which would feel like achy. This tiredness and mood, definitely something's going on with your nervous system. Maybe something's going on with your neurotransmitters, your brain chemicals. Bloating, definitely something's going on with digestion. This is something I hear a lot. I think women are just tired of trying to figure this out on their own. They're reading, they're going online. It's great that we have all this information online, but it can feel like too much. And I think one can drive yourself pretty crazy just trying to analyze this on your own. Skin issues, particularly itching, hives, eczema, are very common in perimenopause. Low motivation, which can affect everything from work to family. And then social media becomes a place to just zone out, thinking that you're getting more help for yourself, but you could end up just using that as a tool to not really participate in life the way you could. The other thing I hear is that women might say, I went to test for menopause and my gynae says my hormone levels are fine. And that's very common. And I'll explain why when I show you what happens to your hormones. Your hormones are not going in a straight line. And so it's very, very challenging to do a blood test to figure this out. So the question I ask is, are you feeling stuck? And a lot of women in their 40s and 50s do struggle with chronic fatigue, poor sleep, stubborn weight, the sense of being wired and tired. And this is in spite of trying to eat healthily, working out, doing everything right. And what's really going on is this hormonal shift. These hormones, the female hormones, the fertility hormones, are think of them as messengers, and they are messengers that are part of an entire orchestra. And so if one hormone is out of place, everything else starts shifting. Your metabolism shifts, your sleep shifts, your moods shifts, blood sugar shifts, energy shifts, and your entire ability to heal and thrive takes a dip. When you don't get this hormonal drama under control, so if there's the sense of this will just pass, I am just imagining it, I'm making a big fuss about nothing, just remember this: if you don't get off this kind of space, this loop of feeling your body feeling like it's continuously in a survival mode, that just gets worse. And this can lead to blood sugar issues as one goes along. If gut inflammation is not handled early, that can get worse and can lead to autoimmune type situations. And if blood sugar is not in good balance, then that can obviously affect metabolism and blood sugar itself. So if you just start with this assumption that's what's happening to you hormonally is involved in every part of your body from head to toe, it just makes sense to take some charge of it, because without that, it's not about getting on a short-term, one supplement. I take a supplement for my gut, the bloating is better. But if the root cause is your hormonal imbalance and how it's being, expressed in the body and how you're managing it, that may get better for a while and then something else picks up again. One of my clients described it really beautifully. She said, in perimenopause, it feels like whatever I was able to brush under the carpet and just get away with through basic, habits, it's all coming to face me again. And I think that's exactly how it feels. Things that you've been able to handle and resolve in the short term do come back. So there are 80 symptoms that come under perimenopause. This is just a snapshot of the most common ones. Some of these are pretty kind of obvious, but some are surprising. So aches and pains are surprising for a lot of people. You suddenly feel more achy. Your joints are not as flexible as before. And so if you're exercising in the same way as before, that can definitely be a problem. Anxiety and mood, it does creep up, but the sense of feeling more blue, feeling more anxious is very, very real at this stage. So what's happening? And really what's happening is your body is changing its operating system. So if you remember the graph of your hormonal years, the fertility years in your 40s, so if you just look at timelines, you have a 10-year period of perimenopause before you hit menopause. You're considered menopausal when you've had 1 year without your period. And that's typically, for women, that's typically in their early 50s. So you could spend your entire 40s in perimenopause. For some women, it can start as early as 35 or 38. In this period, and it's a long stretch of time, the operating system of the body is changing. And that's exactly how I want you to think about it. The body is actually changing something really fundamental. So fertility no longer matters. And so those hormones are changing. But what's coming into play is a greater demand on the nervous system. And respecting that, supporting that nervous system has to be the starting point, is, I think, really critical to thriving through perimenopause, which is what we're talking about today. So the method I have created, which I've been doing, over the last decade plus, really, and I think this is what makes my method really unique. I'm not focusing on one piece alone. I'm not just looking at stress. I'm not just looking at gut. I'm not just looking at whether you detoxify. I'm not just looking at food. I'm holding all these pieces together because they really all are part of a jigsaw. And the jigsaw is different for different people, but we all have these basic parts that have to be managed. Now, the starting point for most people when things start falling apart is in the nervous system. The neuroendocrine system is the nervous system and the hormonal system. And the reason I've highlighted this is because today I'm going to focus mainly on this. And as I describe over the next 2 more days, as I describe my methodology in more detail, I will be touching on some of this as well. But this is really important. I find that if this is off balance, then everything else goes off balance. And you can go on the most, well-designed, sophisticated detox program in the world, if you're not taking care of this, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. So this has to be the starting point. This is all about stress and sleep and your hormonal balance, which really is dependent on how you eat and what your blood sugar is like. So all of this matters. And the way I want you to think about the adrenal system or the nervous system is that the body is still designed like a caveman or cavewoman. In that design is a very sophisticated awareness of stress. So if your body is under long-term stress so the genetics, the circuitry is the same, which is why we crave sugar when we are stressed, which is why we crave salt when we are stressed. Because the caveman's thinking in the body is like, if I am under stress, my survival is at stake, because stress at that time meant needing food or becoming food. And so the moment we are under long-term stress, the nervous system does take a hit. The reality for us today, and this is a conversation I have with my clients on a daily basis, is we have become so used to a certain level of stress that we don't recognize it as stress anymore, but the body might be recognizing it as stress. Now, if your body is in what's called the sympathetic mode, which is the fight-flight mode, it's preparing the body for fighting or flighting. And heart rate goes up, cholesterol goes up, blood pressure goes up, digestion goes down, metabolism goes down, thyroid gets affected, blood sugar gets affected. And this is okay if you're doing this 20, 30% of the time. As long as 70 to 80% of the time, you're in the opposite, in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is also called the rest and digest nervous system. The rest and digest state of being, where the body returns to a sense of calm. And that's when your hormones are at their best and the body has a chance to repair. Now, it doesn't take much to agree that we're spending more than 20, 30% of this time, and sometimes not, any significant time in the parasympathetic nervous system mode, which is why the whole practice of mindfulness and meditation is very important. But I think it has to come from, it's not just about doing 10 minutes of breath work. That's a great start, but I think it does require looking deeper at where the stresses are on the body. Physical stresses, physiological stresses, emotional stresses, spiritual stresses, they all matter. So what are the top 5 mistakes I see women make that does impact stress? Number 1 is not putting ourselves first, not recognizing stress as stress, reaching for extreme solutions. And this is something I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about, because I think the reaction to perimenopausal symptoms for a lot of women is, so if I've been doing some exercise and eating a certain amount and I'm gaining weight and I'm feeling tired and my skin's not looking great, I'm not feeling good, I'm going to move more. I'm going to eat less. And, popular media just honestly feeds into that, because, the longer the fasts are, the stricter the keto is, the more people celebrate it online. And there is a space for fasting and keto, but I will not work, in my practice, I will not work with the woman who's showing symptoms of perimenopause, nervous system dysregulation, and put her on a fasting program or a keto program till we have this conversation and sort some of this out. Because I think if your body is under a lot of stress and then you go on an extreme program, whether it is exercise or cutting down food, you can actually stress the body more, and then the metabolism really does get damaged. So I do see a lot of women who have spent time in their 20s and 30s doing really extreme diets and exercise protocols. They kind of have to relax that when they're trying to get pregnant, because the body may or may not, that may not support fertility. But then they come into perimenopause and a lot of this just starts falling apart because the body's still stressed. That stress, switch is like a button that goes on. That switch doesn't go off easily. It's easy to blame age. I think we have to, yes, perimenopause happens at a certain age, and we are talking about age here, but it can't all be about age. I think we have to take some ownership of what we're doing with that time we have. And the other one is not changing anything, just believing that if plant-based worked for me, or if vegan worked for me, if keto worked for me, if carnivore worked for me, if low fat worked for me, then that's going to work forever. What you need does change through your lifespan for everybody, but more for women than for men, just because our hormones are just so much more complex. A little bit about the stages of menopause. So as I said, this can be early perimenopause can be in the 40s, but it's typically your 40s where you're in perimenopause. Average age of menopause is 51, and then there is the post-menopause, late post-menopause space as well. So what happens to our hormones? And this is really, really important because this explains so many symptoms. We produce these hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Sorry, my screen is doing its own thing. This all starts at puberty or just after puberty. And these hormones generally kind of do what they do over the fertility years. And then you'll see how estrogen just starts going down. These are your two main fertility hormones, but progesterone just drops down. I like to compare estrogen and progesterone as dance partners. So they balance each other out. Estrogen is the slightly wild one. Progesterone is the responsible one, right? So you can see this, this wild dance partner is there. The levels are going down, but it's lost its check and balance because progesterone has just said bye-bye and I'm going. So this estrogen, we call this stage a possible estrogen dominance. And what it means is not that you have extra levels of estrogen necessarily, but in comparison to progesterone, your estrogen levels are just unchecked. Now, the other thing that happens is that it's not a straight line down. You can see these ups and downs, which is why if you do a blood test and you capture the blood test here versus here, you're going to get very different readings, which is why a blood test, most doctors will not test for menopause or perimenopause for that reason, because it's not conclusive. And so I think working with symptoms, working with lifestyle and food is really the only way to look at this, with the exception of HRT. And that's not my space, but I recognize that is an available option for women. The other thing that goes down, testosterone goes down, but the other thing that goes down is melatonin, your sleep hormones. And look at this, around the 40 mark, sleep hormones go down. So you've got a situation where estrogen is hanging out alone. Estrogen loves to grow things. There will be more cysts and fibroids if estrogen has it her way. There will be more weight if estrogen has her way. Plus, you're not sleeping as well. That's not going to help with any of those things. So as estrogen goes down, progesterone goes down, digestion goes down. And what I call stress tolerance or resilience, I feel that also goes down along with this. Your sensitivity to cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and the other one that's insulin resistance, which means you're more sensitive to changes in sugar. Your sugar levels go up and down more, and your insulin needs to work harder. Insulin is one of the hormones that helps with blood sugar management. It needs to work harder to create balance. Now, in this situation, there will be more cravings. Again, there will be more weight. There will be, also a higher risk of heart-related issues, which really comes in that post-menopause space. But I think in one's 40s, it's really important to start paying attention to some of these numbers that we think. A lot of women think this is not relevant for us, that men should be the ones focused on this, but I think we need to pay attention to our lipids, to our blood sugar as well in our 40s to really protect us from what happens in our 50s. A lot of these hormones it's really interesting. Estrogen is a natural painkiller. So the moment she goes down, we get more achy. Estrogen is a natural way in which our blood lipids stay in control, which is why when this goes down, our cholesterol might go up, and so on, and same with insulin and blood sugar. Once you understand this, it becomes really easy to make sense of those symptoms, because the worst feeling is, what's happening to my body? I have no clue what to do. I have no clue what's going on. And is it my fault? Did I not do enough exercise? Did I not do enough of, my food was not strict enough? Because that instinct to do more, to be tougher on ourselves, is very strong for most of us. So that becomes the space we sit in. And that guilt and that anxiety just makes all of this much worse. Just a visual on how I see estrogen and progesterone. And one thing about estrogen, most of it is produced by the body, but we also get it from our environment, particularly pesticides and plastics. And I will be talking about that a little bit in tomorrow's session. So estrogen dominance, when you have more estrogen without its partner, you get some symptoms that are very, very particular to perimenopause, hot flashes being the biggest one. So if you are experiencing hot flashes, that's probably what's happening. All right, I can see a lot of names over here, people who worked with me or people who know me, and I see a lot of new names as well. So I'd like to just introduce not just who I am, but why do I do the work I do. I run the nutrition clinic. We've been, and it's a clinic based in Singapore. I started out at Camden Medical Center about 12 years ago. Before that, I worked with a medical doctor. I'm trained as a scientist who became interested in functional medicine along the way, and I've trained in this area. We've been awarded the best nutritionist 2 years in a row. We've worked with over 3,500 people, and more than 85% of our clients reduce their symptoms within 3 months. I like collecting data. I'm a scientist by training, so I think that just comes naturally for me. One of the things I feel about this whole space of wellness and nutrition is that it can sometimes feel very much out there, and so you do these things and then what? And for me, it's really important to know I do something and then this is what happens. That sense of connectivity is something I'm very drawn to. So the way I work is I've created a system, and I know it works because I'm collecting data on my clients. I'm collecting medical data where it's needed, where there are thyroid readings or blood sugar readings, but I'm also collecting symptom data. And symptoms are how we experience life. So symptoms are really important to me. So we collect, for almost everybody I work with, we're collecting symptoms on a monthly basis, if not more frequently. So I know that this process works, and this is what we've collected over the years. That's my training, that's my experience, but I want to talk to you about the real why. Why do I do this? Because I think we all have to find that why. I do help my clients identify the root causes, and I have created this unique methodology, but my story of why I do this started many, many years ago. At the age of 35, I was told that I could not get pregnant. And before that, I had seen my father experience really really poor health, but in a way that was that changed everything for us as a family. That's my mom, that's my daughter, and that's me. I've seen medicine work really well at saving lives. I'm not anti-medicine in any way, but I also know as a family member or somebody who fell very sick, the first thing I wanted to know is what can we do? What can we do as individuals? What can we do to prevent this from happening for all of us? And I think the why for many people is family. It is about being there for our family in a certain way. I've seen how poor health can change a family. And my father was ill for 10 years before he passed on. And a few years after that, I'd gotten married. I wanted to have a child. I was told not possible without some support. So we looked at IVF. But I had this voice in my head that said that your body's just not ready. I'd gone through so much with seeing my dad be so unwell that I don't think I could tell that my body was just not where it was meant to be. At 35, I think I felt much, much older than my years. And so I quit my job and I decided to study whatever I could about fertility, hormones, nutrition, toxins. This material wasn't available online. I ordered books. I did some research. There were some studies coming out on plastics and hormones. There were studies coming out on organic food. That was early days of people recognizing that gluten could be an issue for some people. And so I changed my diet. I changed my lifestyle. At 38, I got pregnant with this amazing young thing who's now 15 years old. And at that time, I felt better than I had done for a long time. So my IBS cleared up. I was losing hair, that settled. And I knew that I had fixed something on a deeper level. And quite honestly, that worked really well for me for a period of time. And then as I got into perimenopause myself, I knew I had to start looking at things all over again, because what worked for me in order to get pregnant, and I had my daughter at 38, which meant that I was already in perimenopause as I was a mom of a young child. And I started seeing the same patterns in my clients, that it's the same story again and again. And so then I've gone and specialized more into hormonal health, and that's what brings us here. That's why I'm doing what I do. I'd like to do a little exercise. I want you to imagine your life in your 40s and beyond. So wherever you are, just look ahead. I want you, if you have a piece of paper or your phone, just write down the big scary fears. You're here because there is something that's on your mind. You're here because you're here to learn. You're here to find out more. But I think if we dig deeper, there is a worry and anxiety, a fear that brings somebody to a topic like this. I want you to write that down for yourself. If you feel comfortable sharing any of this on the chat, please do. You can send it to me, or you can send it to the entire group. And now I want you to think about your own goals. Make them wild. What are your dreams? Describe yourself. How do you see yourself in perimenopause, post-menopause, in that entire space? How do you look? How do you feel? I think a lot of us don't do that because I think we are quite uncomfortable with the idea of aging. I think as women, aging means something very different to us. It's about the outside, but I think it's also about just, our role, what happens to us as family grows older. And so I just want to take a few minutes for everybody to spend some time thinking about this. So now I want you to imagine, what would it mean to you to meet that need, to meet the needs, to be able to overcome those fears? And I want you to just sit with that, while we're having this conversation. I'm happy for you to ask me questions at the end. So the way most people try to improve how they feel simply doesn't work. And I think all of us know that. We try things, works for a while, doesn't work for a while. And it's frustrating. So these are the sorts of situations or personas I see. I do see women who are like, okay, I'm just going to eat a little bit of everything, hope that moderation is all I need, hope for the best. Not going to, I'm not going to think too much about it, and just keep my fingers crossed. So just in case you recognize yourself in any of this, this is the person I see the most, the exhausted perfectionist. So this is, and I see this more with women than men. And these days, when I'm starting to have conversation with my clients about their story, I go back to what kind of a student were you, because that's giving me clues about who they are at their 40s and 50s. That perfectionism shows up very early. And we do live in a world and a society where that perfectionism is celebrated, right? It's all about getting results. And, that's great, that's fine. But we sometimes miss out on just the level of exhaustion that goes with it. This perfectionism shows up in how we work, how we are with our family. And also, I do see a lot of women who come in with Excel spreadsheets with their macros written out, and they're going to F45 twice a day, and they've got everything mapped out. They're almost too good a student. They've kind of taken all this knowledge from the web, and they've created a program for themselves. And that's great if it works, but it's often too much, because when you do that, you feel like you need to do everything. This laundry list of supplements, this laundry list of things that they eat, they don't eat. And I do believe in simplification, because I wouldn't want to live like that. I don't have an Excel spreadsheet. I don't weigh my food when I eat it. I do not take a laundry list of supplements. Yes, I do take some supplements. Yes, I do avoid certain things. But this need for it always to be perfect, I think, is actually quite dangerous, because it can make us very fearful of food. And it can make us believe that our body is really quite weak, and it's not. We're very, very resilient if we give the body the right thing. This is often, the other side of the perfectionist. It's kind of holding to everything too tightly, and then the emotional eater. And this is obviously very, very common. And the overworked hustler, the person who's just, looking after everything in their in their world, the glue of the family, works fine, 20s, 30s, works fine, 40s, 50s, not so good. Yeah, this can be a breaking point for a lot of women, where often women just feel like I'm doing way, way, way too much. And it's not really acknowledged work. So the thing I think about is, in any household, it's the woman who knows when is how many eggs are in the fridge, when do we need to do the grocery shopping again. There is this entire world of work that we do in our home and work, and it's just an overload. It's crushing for a lot of women. And I think for a lot of women, it works in our 30s. We actually feel really good. We feel like super moms and super women. But in your 40s and 50s, that same superwoman tendency can come to really bite you. So think about which one of these do you resonate with the most, because that's going to give you some clues about where your personal stress is coming from. And if you take away one thing from today's session, is that your hormones are not going to get into, your female hormones are not, they're not able to get into better balance if your stress hormones and your sleep hormones are not. That's got to be the starting point. So this is where some of you might be now, actually wherever you are now, and this is where most women want to be. And for a lot of us, this whole space of aging, perimenopause, menopause, it tends to be about how we look, and there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. But I'd like to just present again that deeper why. Why do you want that energy? Why do you want that vitality? For many people, it's about the people. Especially for most people, for most of us, it's about the people in our lives. We want to be there for the people who matter to us. And we want, it's very hard to be there for the people around us if you're tired and achy and moody and not able to sleep and irritable and bloated. It's just not, it's not going to, you're not going to be your best version. I think there's an opportunity for us to be the best version of who we are as we grow older. And I think I think just owning that stage of life and not always looking back and saying, I want to be 30 again, but I want to really enjoy this stage of life for what it is. I think that's a really worthy goal and something to think about. Travel, lifestyle, I think is important. Again, these things that feel like, yes, of course, I'm able to travel. But if you're achy, you're not really going to enjoy it in the same way. If you're tired, you're not going to enjoy it in the same way. And one that I think we don't talk about enough is that we want to earn, we want to work, we want to grow businesses, run businesses. We want to do a lot of things in our 50s and our 40s. We don't want to say I'm done with everything that matters. And again, you're not going to be able to do that job at the capacity unless you have your health and your well-being. And I'm talking about just how you wake up and feel every day. I'm not even talking about the deeper health of getting your blood work. And just how do you feel when you wake up? How do you turn up when you're in the office? How do you feel at the end of the day? And a big part of this is just really looking within and figuring out what matters to you. And that's one thing I'd like us to all think about. What matters to you? Why do this? I could give you a food plan today. I could give you, a bunch of supplements to take. That's fine. That's all fine. But all of that only matters and works if it's connected to something deeper. Once you have that connection with something deeper, everything else falls into place and everything else becomes very doable. There isn't this resistance to change that could be there otherwise. So what I'd like to say is this is where you are now, where you want to be is, it's not just about how you look, but it's also about how you feel and how you live, and just that sense of vitality. The issue is that the route to get there is not, sorry, not sure what happened there. The route to get there is not always, if you just go through trial and error, it's a very long journey, and that's frustrating in itself. I know you want to feel great again. I know once you find that root motivation, you will be willing to make the changes, but you also don't want to waste time. I get that. That's how I felt 15 years ago, and that's what I hear from my clients every day. You want a road, you want a fast car, you want to get there, right? I get that. I think there's nothing wrong with saying that. So I'm putting together the Perimenopause Blueprint. I'll be sharing more about the actual program tomorrow. So tomorrow is the day where I'll give you more details. We'll be talking about metabolism tomorrow. We'll be talking about the blueprint tomorrow, and then I'll go into a lot more detail about the blueprint on Wednesday. Thursday. But in general, what we need to recognize is we are taking all this work that needs to be done, the right food, gut health, movement, stress, sleep, balancing the estrogen, botanicals, nutrients, and the why. And this is on the right is what we want, right? We want the energy, the sleep, the bloat to go away, the mood to be better. I think the other thing we want is confidence in our choices. We don't want to be guilty when we're, at that Christmas party coming up, wondering whether this is okay or not. I think there's some freedom in knowing what works for you and what doesn't, and not having to guess and blame yourself when you make certain choices that are perfectly reasonable. I'd like to share with you a little bit of the kind of symptom collection I do and the kind of experiences some of my clients have. So this is an example of somebody, Karen, who came to see me in August and September, so very, very recently. And so this is how we kind of go through this process. She fills in a form. She's telling us that her mood is a 7 out of 10 at the start, and it goes down to a 3 out of 10 in a month's time. Similarly, that sense of craving and compulsive eating goes down as well. The bloating goes down really quite massively. The binge eating, the cravings, binge eating all around the same. The hives. And so I've collected this for everybody I work with. And so what I'm doing through this process is also saying, well, what did Karen do? What was her story? Let's break that down. Let's take the gems out of that, the nuggets that really work, and use that again and again for my clients. So we're all it's really a community of us learning and leaning on each other. Here's another one. This is covered over a 3-month period, where there is, fatigue, morning and evening fatigue that's really high, goes down. The morning fatigue goes down faster. The evening fatigue takes a little bit of time. And so in June, I added something else to her protocol, which helped bring it down. And that is not just information for me, it's information for her, that she did this work. So she could have taken out a certain food, added in a supplement, changed her exercise. But I think this process of doing some work in a step-by-step manner, collecting your symptoms, and then reflecting on that I think it's a primary education in ourselves, that our story will be different. The story is different for everybody. So there'll be some people who need to really work on gut health to get their energy improved. You wouldn't typically think that that's what it's going to take to get their energy improved. But when you do this work and you literally are stacking things on top of the other, you start understanding, I do this, and it's like a key that opens up this door. And so that's really, really useful information about the way we operate and how we are built. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about metabolism, what's going on with metabolism, and I'm also going to introduce the methodology I use around balancing hormones, which covers stress and sleep, gut health, and how you detoxify. And really, this is at the center of it all. If you have any questions, I'll be really happy to take them. If you have anything that you'd like me to cover tomorrow, let me know that as well. And if you would like to speak to me and book an inquiry call, you can just use this and book a 10-minute call to have a chat if there's something you'd like to discuss in private. And we're now open for questions. So we've got 10 minutes, but I'm happy to extend that to 15 minutes if it works for everybody. So while I'm waiting for you to think of your questions, I will just address a few points about what happens.
It's okay, just change. I don't care.
Sorry, could you please mute yourself? I'm going to talk a little bit about what changes post-menopause or post-menopause. a few things that matter. Really important to start paying attention to the heart, to blood sugar, to bones. Those are the areas that matter a lot. And those are the areas that show up a lot. So osteoporosis, heart disease, diabetes, I think we need to really pay attention to that. I think for a lot of women in perimenopause and postmenopause, we have to be very, very aware of how much protein we're consuming. If you don't consume enough protein, that can lead to not being able to maintain muscles. So really important to pay attention to that skeletal system. It's what's holding you up. And I don't think there's anything that ages us more than that being compromised, right? When you're not able to stand straight or walk well. So just doing the kind of exercises that are around strength, around protecting the resistance training for the bones, building muscle. It's not the time to think about running your marathon unless you're super fit to begin with. It's not the time to take on something like that could affect the joints. The other thing that happens post-menopause is during perimenopause, as I said, we don't do extreme fasting. We don't do anything too extreme because the hormones are so volatile. But after you go through that and the hormones are basically down and you're in menopause proper, all that pressure gets reduced for most women. So women are able to do longer fasts post-menopause than we are able to do in perimenopause. And so that's an interesting change as well. It's almost like that whole zone of shift has resolved. And so the body is able to handle a little bit more of that so-called stressor on the body. I've got a few questions. Is it normal to menopause at 46? Absolutely, absolutely. 46 is quite common, I would say. I've got a question about the recordings. Yes, you'll get the recording for all the sessions, so not to worry if you're not able to make it to a session. Thank you, Jennifer. You're happy that you've gone past all of this and you're thriving. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of comments about just wanting to really be healthy for families. So I completely hear where that's coming from. Anybody, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions if you'd like to do that. Perfectly happy to take questions. If not, I'm gonna wrap up and I hope to see all of you tomorrow. I hope you've enjoyed this and I hope to see all of you tomorrow. And if you could please let your friends, family, anybody who you think will benefit from this information, please do share this information. And I would really appreciate that. I've got a couple of messages. Let me just check those. Thank you for the feedback. Yes, you will get, it's the same login. There is a WhatsApp group link that was sent in the email that you would have received after logging in. Use that because we're going to put the logins there. It's easier for most people. So if you'd like that, but yes, same login, same time, everything is the same, just different content. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.